We now move to Kenosha, Wisconsin. The jury still has not reached a verdict after a third day of deliberations in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. They've spent now more than 23 hours in the jury room deliberating this week. But the big news of the day came from the judge banning a major news network for the remainder of the trial. Stephanie Haynes in Milwaukee has more on what happened.
Judge Bruce Schrader called Kyle Rittenhouse and all the attorneys into the courtroom Thursday morning to address a report from Kenosha police who say they believe someone was trying to take pictures of the jury Wednesday night. The judge said it happened while the jury was on the bus.
The jury in this case is being transported from a different location in a bus with windows covered.
The judge said police noticed a car following the bus and pulled it over when they saw the car run a red light. Kenosha police ticketed the driver and asked who he was.
Claimed that he was a producer with NBC News, employed for MSNBC.
Police tweeted there was no breach of security regarding the jury, nor were there any photographs obtained. They are still investigating. The judge said this.
No one from MSNBC News will be permitted in this building for the duration of this trial. This is a very serious matter, and I don't know what the ultimate truth of it is, but absolutely it would go without much thinking that someone who is following the jury bus, that is it's extremely serious matter, and will be referred to the proper authorities for further action.
A spokesperson for NBC News provided this statement. Last night, a freelancer received a traffic citation. While the traffic violation took place near the jury van, the freelancer never contacted or intended to contact the jurors during deliberations and never photographed or intended to photograph them. We regret the incident and will fully cooperate with the authorities on any investigation.
The jury will continue deliberations tomorrow morning. The judge has not said whether he will ask the jury to return over the weekend if a verdict is not reached by tomorrow night. So let's go in depth on both of these major trials. Joining me now in Dallas, Texas, is a criminal defense attorney with a decade of experience, Shaun Naidoo. Welcome, Shaun. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Natalie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, let's start with Ahmaud Arbery's case here in Georgia, where all evidence has now been presented. The defense called 7 witnesses. The state called 23. Were you surprised by that?
No, in this particular case, when you have self-defense being claimed, you're going to have as many witnesses on the defense side as you are going to be on the state side, because normally the burden of proof is on the prosecutor, but whenever you allege or invoke self-defense, then the burden shifts to the defense to prove that there was a reasonable use to use force. So, no, it doesn't surprise me at all.
I'd like to get your thoughts on defendant Travis McMichael testifying in his own defense. How did he come across to you on the stand?
Well, he came across very honest to me, which was a little bit shocking. I mean, he admitted on the stand that Ahmaud didn't have any weapons, didn't brandish any weapons, didn't put his hands in his pockets. So when I was listening to the testimony, I don't see where there was a threat to pull the weapon and use the weapon on Ahmaud. That's my take on it, and he didn't put anything in his testimony that made it sound like he was fearful that for his life.
Right. The prosecution was trying to poke holes in his story about how he came to shoot Ahmaud Arbery, even alleging that his story kind of changed once he gave a statement to police. How effective do you think the prosecution was in that regard?
I thought they did a good job, the prosecution, in this part, because one thing that they showed was that they pursued Ahmaud. This was what they were terming a citizen's arrest, and whenever you attempt a citizen's arrest, you also accept the liability that could come with that if the arrest is wrong, if there wasn't a crime committed. And so I think, in my opinion, the prosecution did a really good job showing that he was just jogging through the neighborhood and that there was not a crime that was committed.
Well, let's move to the Rittenhouse trial now. To Kenosha, Wisconsin, we go. 3 days and still no verdict. They have been in that jury room for over 23 hours. Is that surprising to you?
No, not at all. You know, I tip my hat to the jury because being a juror, in my opinion, is one of the hardest jobs in America. And when you're dealing with a case of this complexity, I really appreciate a jury that's taking its time to properly go through all the evidence, to make sure that they're, you know, reviewing everything. And so I feel like, you know, whatever the verdict is going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be very thorough and it's going to be very thought out, which I appreciate, you know, being a defense attorney. That you couldn't ask for anything more than that.
Well, he took, of course, he took the stand. The defense wanted to show that Kyle Rittenhouse was kind of the victim here, that he shot in self-defense. How did that go over to you?
You know, it's hard to get into the mind of the jury, but you know, I thought he came off pretty genuine, but how reasonable that's going to be perceived in the jury is really what it's going to come down to. You know, and what it will come down to is whether they feel like he put himself in harm's way. And because he put himself in harm's way, he can't then invoke self-defense. So I think that's really what it's going to come down to is, do they feel like he put his own self in harm's way and now he's trying to invoke self-defense?
And of course, hanging over this trial right now, 2 mistrial requests loom. What do you think about that as a possibility of happening?
Natalie, great question. So, you know, one of the things inside that jury room that's probably happening, and we may see it tomorrow, is they may be negotiating with one another, maybe for a lesser included charge. And they may not have all 12 jurors in agreement. And a lot of times we see in these cases, they may agree on something lesser, so then that way that there's not a mistrial granted. So that could be what's going on. And if that doesn't happen, then, you know, you can expect a mistrial, because if they can't come to a, you know, a unanimous agreement, then it will be declared a mistrial.
Shaun, Naidoo, we appreciate your insights. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing.